Excellent. Hello, everybody. My name is Ikenna Azwike, and it is my pleasure to be the host at Welcome to Be the Change We Want to See. Excellent. That was really bad. Really, really bad. Come on, Gandhi said that, guys. Don't let the G-man down. Let's try it again. My name is Ikenna Azwike, and it's my pleasure to be your presenter at Be the Change You Want to See. Oh, well done, well done. The gangster would be twirling his lovely little round-brimmed glasses if he'd have heard that, so well done. Okay, so tonight you're in for a cracking night. We're going to be talking about some big themes like equal collaboration. How is it possible to create an equal partnership if you're working from two different worlds? Cultural appropriation in the fashion industry. Diversity in the corporate world, in the media world, because as we all know, it's urgent as well. All right, diversity in Hilversum here in the Netherlands is a little bit like Bigfoot, right? There are people who say they've seen it, but there's no real proof that it's there. Am I right? Yeah, some people are unsure. All right. But to get you up for this evening, we like a lot of engagement. There's going to be plenty of opportunity for you guys to ask questions, and I want you to get involved. And don't be shy. Ask critical questions. Ask constructive questions. We're in a safe space here, so don't worry about all of that. But Pakhuis Zwijger works with this Mentimeter concept. Do you guys know that? Anyone used it before? Okay, well, very simply, there is a website. I want everyone to grab their phones right now. Reach into your pocket, grab your phone. Yes, don't just stare at me, sir. Get your phone out. Do you have a smartphone? You don't, no? No, okay. No, it's very vague. All right, get your smartphone out. Head to, can we just see the address? Is that available for on the screen? Head to menti.com, M-E-N-T-I. Trust me on this, it's going to be worth it, all right? Oh, yeah, it's there. No, that's not it, no. Menti, M-E-N-T-I. Yeah, right at the top. Enter the code that you see there. And then, bam, you will be in and you'll be able to engage with the questions that we're going to pose for you guys. But I'm not saying, every time someone logs in, see that number goes up. So there's more than 8 people in this room. Come on. Let's keep it coming up. Keep it coming up. Come on. We've got to get to 3 figures. Jeez, come on. Good. I'm seeing people with some firm arms crossed. They're just not moving. You, madam. Oh, you don't? Oh, okay. She's got a good excuse. She still lives in the 90s. That's good. I like that. All right, not bad, but let's keep it coming. Good. Come on, 64. 66. All right, you know what? We'll just get cracking. Let us see what sort of people we have in the room, okay? So let's throw up the first question. Everyone who's logged in can participate, so you'll see it's so much fun. You'll be desperate to log in. What is your reason for joining tonight? Because of the themes being discussed? Oh, wow, so dynamic, this. Oh, yeah, who's in the red? Who are those two? Put your hands up. Who's clicked the red? I want to see that. Yeah, that dude. Yeah, you look like a drunkard, buddy. Okay, nice. Okay. We got some very engaged people on the themes. I like that. Okay, let's see the next question. Fashion from Africa should not be worn by everybody. What do we think about that? Oh, there's some, uh-oh. Let's see. Good. Oh, wow, I'm interested. Who are the yellows? Who's it? Oh, wow. Oh, now I want to hear. What's that whole idea? Okay, explain. It's a safe space. It's a safe space here. But that's your gut reaction?
Yeah, if you don't know about the African culture and the whole history, then you shouldn't be wearing braids and their outfits. And I think you should first learn about Africa and...
God damn, so we all need a degree before we go shopping?
Well, not a degree, but you should know what you are wearing and why are you wearing it. Like the braids. Yeah. I mean, Famke Louise doesn't know why she's wearing the braids. But it is an African thing, so...
Okay, interesting. Oh, it's gonna get spiky, it's gonna get juicy. I like this. Okay, another question, please. Is there such a thing as African fashion? What do we think about that? The term African fashion, is it like helpful? Does it do anything? Yeah, people thinking. I wonder what European fashion is, right? South American fashion? North American fashion? Okay. If it's worn in Africa, it's African fashion. Full stop. Even if you're wearing a black polo neck, that is African fashion. Okay, next question. Can a white European girl start an African fashion brand? Oh, who was that? Who the hell was that? Bam! In there straight away. Good Lord. Okay. All right, let me hear from one of the yellows. Who clicked yellow and is willing to give me a few words why? Come on, don't be shy. It's a safe space. Exactly, there's a lot of you. Oh, come on. One of you's got to have the balls to stand up and just a few words why. Yes. Oh. Go for it. Explain.
I think they can start an African-inspired fashion brand. I don't think necessarily it would be an African fashion brand.
All right, nice. Anyone else? Okay, you represent all 20 people. Or 22, in fact. Well done, thanks. All right, well, on that note, it's probably a good moment to introduce a white European girl who started an African fashion brand. Her name is Sehan Brar, and she's very passionate about that brand, and we're going to hear a little bit more about why she initiated tonight and her story behind Afriek. So please give a warm round of applause to Sehan Brar. Okay, have a seat, Sue. Okay, well, before we get onto that mentimeter spiky question, tell us a little bit about Afriek. Why did you start Afriek? For anyone here who doesn't know.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here first. I'm super happy that so many of you came to this night tonight to talk about this topic, which is very close to my heart. And I also want to thank Pakhuis Zwijger for sharing the space with us to talk about this. To answer your question, why did I start an African-inspired fashion brand?
Oh, I like your work. A politician in the making. That's nice. Go.
Thanks. It was 6 years ago that we started. Me and Kars, my co-founder, and there he is. We were very naive, basically. It was based on my background, my studies. I studied conflict studies and human rights, and I wrote my bachelor thesis on how for over 100 years we've been looking from the West in the same way at Africa. And it's been always like, the West, we know best, we are going to tell you what to do, and then you always fail, and why are you not taking our advice? So I said, whether it's colonialism or development collaboration, it's all the same mindset. And I said, we have to change this mindset. But then I went to Rwanda for my research, and I was completely shocked, because I found myself with exactly the same bias. Like I thought, aren't our hospitals better? Aren't our systems more efficient? Aren't we, more developed maybe? And I was very troubled by that because I thought, this is a huge problem. In conflict studies, you learn that when you see the other person as less, that's when shit hits the fan. That's when, when you're acting superior to someone else, that's when conflict starts. And I asked myself, like, okay, why do I look in this way at Africa? And I thought, the Western media is actually almost always negative. The NGOs are always giving a one-sided image to help poor people. And our education is so white, So I wanted to do something about this huge problem of perception. And I came with the very practical solution of starting a fashion brand.
So was the fashion brand a way of educating yourself and other people at the same time?
It was a way of showing, the beautiful things that could be found in Africa to, my white Dutch fellow citizens. It was a way to show that equal collaboration, that would really work, actually, and that we could learn from each other if we worked in that way.
But Cars is not here, so can you explain what's happened there?
It's been 6 years now, almost, that we've been working on this. And last summer, Cars decided to quit with Afriek because, it's been a very tough year for both of us financially, and when for a long time you don't see how things are gonna be brighter, also for your personal life, that's a good reason to evaluate.
But would you say, has Afriek been a success? I mean, as far as I can see, it has. But obviously, from a business point of view, maybe it's been a struggle. Is that what you're saying?
It has been a struggle. Yeah, it's tough to start a business. It's hard to start a business in fashion, and like the evening what we're talking about tonight, it's about. It's a challenge, and it's questionable to start an African brand, African-inspired brand as white people.
So why this evening? Why was it urgent for you to initiate this conversation?
It was. It's actually this. Like this evening for me is about transformations, and what I just told you about why we started Afriek. That was like one of my the first transformation that brought me to start Afriek. But the second one that I want to share is that started 2.5 years ago when Willa Stoutenbeek from our PR agency, W Green, she said like, hey, you have to step up your branding game. Let's do a focus group. And she organized it. And then the outcome of the focus group was like, you show a very white image of Africa and, it's still very one-sided. And the first reaction that I had to that was, well, aren't we doing our best? Aren't we, doing it so much better than a lot of people? Aren't we working based on equality? And I was offended, like for a few minutes. I'll admit, because that's what happens. And then quickly I realized, I will always be biased because I'm white. I have my white privileged perception, and even though I have the best intentions, we'll have to keep on learning and listening. So after that, we, together with Zinzi de Brouwer and Falene, who are both here, Zinzi will talk later, we did some research on how to improve this, what could we do to change this, and they came up with an ethical manifesto, and in that ethical manifesto there were a lot of questions. And I was like, what's this? What are all these questions? I want answers. Like, how do we approach this? But we came to the conclusion that an evening like this is something that we could do to start conversations, to talk about these difficult topics, and to find answers, because it's. And
talking about difficult topics, what's your reaction to the last question that was just up there? I mean, there was overwhelming support for a white European girl starting an African fashion brand, but there are definitely some not so vocal critics.
Yeah, and I think also these the critical feedback is not as much heard as it is there. You know, for before the 2.5 years ago, I didn't even realize this could be a problem. You know,
And why not?
because blind spots. Because you know, I didn't see. Not really.
I mean, we talked about a little bit before about prioritizing, you and I, and how in the course of setting up your brand, you need to make decisions like, okay, organic cotton, diverse workforce. So could it be that gave you that blind spot? You're just so busy running.
You could
lose
always
track?
come up with excuses saying like, well, you know, at this moment we don't have the time for it. We don't have the money for it. I don't have the network, you know, and you have limited time, you have limited money, so you make decisions, and you can always use that as an excuse, right? Like, and I think in my case, it's very important to see what are your priorities, and then you know, as we are a brand that actually wants to address this inequality, we should be extra aware of these topics, and maybe less, but also important, organic cotton, you know, but then you prioritize. And to go back to your question about the white European girl, that's the thing that I've been struggling with for the brand, but then we worked on the ethical manifesto, but also personally. Like I've been, you know, many times I've been thinking, maybe I should just stop, you know, maybe an African girl should do this, you know, maybe she should just take over, could be. I was recently in New York, and there I felt it even more. And what did you feel more? And what made you feel more? I mean, I think people in New York are very outspoken. I think there's a lot of empowerment for Black female entrepreneurs. You know, you just feel it everywhere. And I felt it in the subway wearing Afriek. You know, like, and maybe
people looked at you in a certain way.
Yeah, and maybe even they didn't, and it was just in my mind. But you know, like I feel like in the States, you know, they've been fighting for equality for so long in such a strong way, and you know, they're very woke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you hope to learn from an event like tonight? What do you hope to take away?
I don't know. I think I'll find new places where I should work on, find new blind spots that we can, you know, where we can develop ourselves. And what I hope mostly is just to, you know, to make this conversation easier, and like, you know, that we dare to you know, I wanted to serve as an example that we dare to have these difficult and awkward conversations, because what I feel often is that I'm afraid to say things, and that's what happened also in the States. Like I met someone, and she was from the Dominican Republic, Afro-American girl, and she, you know, I tried to explain her what I was doing with Afriek, and I was very, you know, polite and afraid to say something wrong, and she told me like, girl, you have to just, you know, speak up, and you don't worry about making mistakes, because you know you're gonna make them anyway, and you know, but if you're tiptoeing around us, that just sucks. Like you should really.
I'm hearing some affirmative support for that point of view. Why is that? Who gave a yeah? Oh yeah. Not so yeah now, are we? Come on. Why do you support that, about the idea that Sehan should just be less shy maybe and just speak up? And
let me think about it. I believe in supporting each other. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, or whatever. Just support. And if you own up that you understand or trying to understand someone else's culture, then I'm all for that.
So being vulnerable is very important when it comes to running a business that maybe crosses cultural boundaries. Gonna go back to our friend over here. What did you think of that answer? I'm sorry.
Safe space.
Oh, this is still safe though. We're not going to lynch you afterwards.
What's the question?
How do you feel about Sehan's response to the question, how she feels about being a white European girl who's started an African fashion brand, and she says sometimes she feels afraid to speak up. Do you think, oh, sorry, that comes with the territory?
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately it does. I think you choose a route that you go down and you kind of have to own up to it. And one of it is indeed kind of admitting your vulnerability in it and your lack of understanding or knowledge within the fashion industry or cultural aspect of it. But I think admitting what is one stance of it and kind of being vulnerable and showing how much of it you know.
And is it 6 years too late, Sehan? I mean, there are people saying, gee, it took you 6 years to figure this out. Do you feel it's never too late?
No, it's never too late. I really think that when you start developing yourself and when you start, I think, being woke, that's what we want. We want you to be woke because then you can teach your friends how to be woke. So it's never too late.
Can I answer this?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, because I think I agree. I think what I learned is that, I'm going to make mistakes anyway, but it's about, being ready to see that, to admit that, to be open to listen and to learn and to, transform to one step further. Because, what I really feel like, as long as we are living in an unequal world, which is underlying the discussion of cultural appropriation, it's just the fact that we live in an unequal world, and as long as that's the case, we have to work towards equality. Mm-hmm. And this is the way we do it, making mistakes. Okay. I think.
Are there mistakes that, for instance, there's a question here, but before I get to you, sir, are there mistakes that you think, these guys you work at Flisco, right? No more, okay. Has anyone worked from Flisco? Are there mistakes that you think Flisco has made or continues to make and you want to correct?
I'm going to answer that question.
Those arms, that's not good body language. That's not good body language. No, but go ahead.
That's slightly different because listening for the last half hour to what you're saying, I think you need to start in a different way. You need to peel the onion differently from what you're doing.
Is this mansplaining? Are you about to mansplain, sir?
What do you mean by that?
Don't worry. Just continue.
So I think the first question is, what is African fashion? Once you have a definition of African fashion, then you start peeling the onion.
What's your definition of African fashion, sir?
My definition of African fashion is a combination of color and design and drawings. Color and drawings and stories.
Damn, that's a lot of stuff.
No, it's the core. If you talk about Africa, then you need to talk about stories because that's linked to Africa in itself.
Are those things not relevant for European fashion?
Different. Perception of consumers is completely different than in Europe. The storyline of a color and a design in Europe is almost irrelevant. Where in Africa, some of the drawings go back 150 years.
Okay, but my question was about equal collaboration and equal partnerships. Do you think it's the wrong question? Okay. But it's the one I'm asking. I feel like in my head is telling me this is the question I want to ask. But
I think if you look at some of the very successful brands in Africa, English and Dutch, they have been developed and designed very much from a European perspective. But knowing the details about what's happening in Africa, knowing the dynamics of Africa, which what I just said, the three elements. And there, of course, you have local designers, you have local developments, but you also have international developments that are very successful in Africa.
Okay, but Flisco creates clothes that are...
Just about Flisco.
No, sure. Okay, but I'm still a bit unclear if you think it's an equal partnership or collaboration between you and the employees working on the continent.
I think you come back to that point, but my first point is I think you're starting the wrong way.
Okay, all right, we're not going to get anywhere there. But thank you very much, Sehan. Oh, there's a question over here. Do we have time for this question? Let's sneak in one question before we go to our next speaker, Zinzi. Yes, madam.
Yes, I'm Carola Leering. My first question is actually, do we want to speak about African fashion, African art, African this, African that, European that? No, I have been working with contemporary African artists, and a lot of them, they don't want to be called an African artist. They just...
You just called them African artists.
Yes, I call them African artists, that's true. But what I want to say is that a lot of those artists who are born in Africa, they say, I'm first an artist, and secondly, yes, I come from Africa. They don't want to be labeled as African. And that's what interests me in this whole discussions. Do we want to say these colberts and dresses, is it an African dress? Well, it is a wonderful dress. Do we need to label them? That's my question.
Okay, it's a good question. We'll get back to that later, probably. And I'm pretty sure I'll touch on that with our next speaker, who is very accomplished. Zinzi de Brouwer, so accomplished, I need to grab my notes, yes. Sorry, Zinzi. She runs a fashion consultancy company and is passionate about making the fashion industry more honest and socially responsible. She's also advised Afriek on the direction and strategy of the Afriek brand. Please give a warm round of applause to Zinzi de Brouwer. And Zinzi is first going to give a short presentation.
Short,
and then,
I don't know.
Oh, sorry.
We'll see.
Sorry.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. It's really nice being here. Okay, my name is Zinzi, and I was born in Maputo. And for those of you that don't know where that is, that's in Mozambique, all the way in the southern tip of Africa. I was raised in between Mozambique, South Africa, and the Netherlands, with a Dutch father and a Mozambican mother. And here you see a glimpse of what it was like growing up in between these two very contrasting worlds. Well, as you can imagine, it brought up a lot of questions about my identity. I mean, I literally grew up in between these two polar opposites, really questioning, like, you know, where do I come from? And feeling the need that I needed to choose a lot of times. And luckily, I don't anymore. But yeah, all my life, I've been trying to find peers that I can have common ground with. And just like Stephan's story, and I think a lot of you people probably can relate in some kind of capacity what it feels like to be misunderstood or misrepresented or simply feeling different. So I started working with Stephan, with Afriek, a couple of years ago. And as a brand strategist, I really try to help brands kind of convey their message and really make sure that their DNA seeps through everything that they say and do and promise. When I started working with Stephan on their brand strategy for the future, I saw a brand that had already the awareness and the consciousness of what it was to be a Dutch brand operating in Rwanda. And at that time, I really felt they were playing it safe. You know, they wanted their consumer to tell the story with the clothing that they were selling. And I remember in one of our earlier conversations, I was really trying to push Stephan and Kars to kind of answer what kind of statement are they really making. And I think they've evolved quite a bit from them. You know, they've become a brand that has kind of taken a courageous voice. And one that is kind of taking ownership of the platform that they've created. And I think this can be an example for a lot of brands, because in the future, it's probably more deadly to be impartial than to actually take a stance and voice an opinion, I believe. And I think that once a brand voices their opinion or takes a stance in something, you know, you start to touch others. So, speaking of courage, the preparation for my talk today was, well, it started off a little bit ironic because, you know, I started to think about all these topics that we're going to discuss: cultural appropriation, representation, diversity. And And I thought about the many examples I have witnessed, in this past decade that I've been active in the fashion industry. And a lot of the times really troubling examples of inequality and unfairness, things that I've personally been through. And I started to question myself, how do I tell you these stories in an ethical way, in a way that does not bash or dismiss, the wonderful but often problematic brands that I've worked with, a way that I can remain sensitive but still have my message come across, a way that I can be critical but not lose my own integrity. So in other words, I struggled with my own ethics, talking about ethics. Yet these are the questions I really ask myself on a daily basis. And I think probably what brands ask themselves nowadays, and probably what people ask themselves on the daily basis. And I think this is a reflection of the zeitgeist that we're living in, because the world is becoming smaller, whether we like it or not. We are living in what feels like a global village. And through my work, I try to kind of see how can we make room and space for all these origins and all these identities and all these cultural differences and perspectives. And expectations that we see and feel around us. And Tom Friedman once wrote that, as the world is becoming flatter, the more we want to be different. So how do we remain respectful towards others, but integral to ourselves in this global village? And this essentially highlights the importance of ethics, right? So we all need a moral compass to guide us, to help us navigate through all of this, because, otherwise we just feel lost. And I think it speaks volumes that Tony's Chocolonely has a critical voice, who is with us today. And also that, for example, fast fashion brand H&M appointed a head of inclusion and diversity for the very first time in 2018. This says something about the world we are living in. So in my work, I have the privilege to talk to a lot of designers and a lot of brands. And I speak to them about how they take inspiration from other cultures. And I witness how fearful they sometimes are to even do so. And they're afraid of doing anything wrong, to borrow inspiration and to take something that is not really theirs. So the idea of commercial property is a really tricky thing in the fashion industry, because once you borrow inspiration and you make it your own and then sell it, how do you honor what you borrowed? So we certainly have witnessed a lot of brands at the downfall of this, right? And most recently Prada, and recently I talked to you 2 months ago with a racist connotation to its toys. And Dolce & Gabbana, you might have seen the huge outrage on Instagram with an ad where they showed a Chinese woman eating pizza with chopsticks. So cultural appropriation happens all the time in fashion. That's just the truth. A really interesting example I've seen recently, maybe some of you know Abubakar Fofana. He comes from Mali and he's a master indigo dyer. And he had a really honest conversation with his followers. He expressed how disappointed he was because he does a lot of workshops to students from all over the world about dyeing indigo and what that entails. And he felt that these students were just taking his knowledge and then portraying themselves as master dyers. And just so you know, in Mali, it takes 21 years for you to consider yourself a master dyer. So the problem is when we do not attribute or acknowledge where we borrow our inspiration from. And a lot of designers fail to share the benefits of the inspirations that they take. And I think that's the problem. I come to the conclusion that we need a space to be heard. And by we, I mean the misrepresented, the marginalized, the minority. When designers ask me, well, how do I ensure that a particular tribe doesn't feel culturally appropriated by, my designs? My answer is really simple. Ask them. we cannot fill in the blanks for others. These communities need to be given an opportunity to voice how they see it. And I believe we are heading into that direction. There are brands that are making these efforts. But then the next challenge will be, are we ready to hear what they have to say? And are we going to give importance to what they have to say? So this is a big reason why I decided to start my own design practice a few years ago, Project Palha. And at that time, I really wanted to contribute to placing Mozambique on the global design map. Because when we talk about Africa, we always, tend to talk about a specific part of Africa. And Mozambique hardly gets mentioned when it comes to creativity and design. And I wanted to work with artisan women of my country who are living in really rural, isolated environments and who have been working on their crafts for decades and decades. And I wanted to bring designers from here to work there with them, in this embedded learning environment. And so we did that. In 2016, we brought the first designer. And it really is true what they say. There is no such thing as failure, only learning experiences. Although at that time, it did feel like a failure. I was confronted again with how a Western framework was placed on an African story. When we brought the first designer there, a huge culture shock happened, which, okay, that happens. But again, taking pity and poverty became central themes to what we were doing there. It wasn't anymore about the beauty and the handicraft, the lush surroundings, the Mozambican culture, the fact that we were working with, these wonderful women who had a life experience of stories and things to share with us. It became about feeling sorry for a community, for a culture, and ultimately for a country. But I felt determined that there was another way to do things. And so we started using design and creativity as a vehicle to understand one another better. And what I mean by that is we just got to working, We got to getting our hands dirty, weaving, working on the skills on a daily basis in this natural environment. And in the end, we didn't only learn skills and techniques, we learned life lessons from one another. And so, this was really about using design as a tool and as a vehicle for interconnection. And then a really beautiful thing starts to happen. Creativity starts breaking barriers. And what I most take away from this is what John Berger once wrote, which was, the way we see things is affected by what we know and what we believe in. We cannot impose our norms and values on those different than us. So with Palha and with work that I do, with brands such as Afriek, I want to build these bridges with others. But let's be honest, building bridges is incredibly hard. And I see Afriek doing it, I see other brands struggling to do it, and I really think a fundamental shift is needed in order to be able to do so more readily. So speaking of this shift, let's talk about some positive changes that have happened. So we have recently seen Edward Kobina Ninful, Ghanaian-born, thrive as British Vogue editor. We have seen an influx of fashion magazines covers with women of color. Virgil Abloh, son of Ghanaian immigrants, became artistic director of Louis Vuitton menswear. In his first debut show, he made sure every audience was aware of the origin of the models and the origin of the parents' models. This year, 2019, renowned fashion journalist Suzy Menkes will host Condé Nast's first luxury summit in Cape Town. So herein, African experts and entrepreneurs will give voice to what luxury means to them. Fenty Beauty became one of the most inclusive beauty brands in the world. IKEA announced to start collaborating with African artists on new collections. You might have seen Beyoncé was recently on tour in South Africa. She represented so many African designers through her outfits. So all these pioneers who want to embed change, positive change. So there's no doubt that Africa is the future, at least in my opinion. And if you don't take my word for it, look around you, because the large consumer base is only growing and growing. And if brands have not jumped yet on that bandwagon, they surely will have to in the future if they don't want to miss out on this huge consumer market. But I must admit, I've lately pondered on my physical presence in my line of work, where I try to inspire others to create these bridges and collaborations with Africans. I find myself sitting in meeting rooms here in Holland and, you know, with people who are truly invested, who really want to collaborate, who really want to make a change. But I really ask myself, you know, where are the people that look like me? Where are the people that have similar backgrounds like me? Because I don't see them, and I know they're out there. You know, I still see too many offices, too many workspaces without much representation, with a true lack of diversity. And I think it becomes really difficult to understand our differences if we don't have representation in our actual work environment. In my humble opinion, every brand, every company needs to employ a critical thinker or a head of inclusion or diversity or however you want to call it. So, if we want to embed real change, we need to start living by these values. I think as a humanity, we need to extend our awareness beyond the immediate sphere of the awareness we live on a daily basis. You know, the understanding that someone else's misery is our misery. And Nigerian author Chinua Achebe once wrote really beautifully, "The world is like a mask dancing. If you want to see it well, you do not stand in one place." So we can legislate around inequality, and we can create laws on educating girls in developing countries. But unless we really feel it and live by it, we're not going to make any real difference. So I think it's time to walk the walk. You know, there's a saying that says, all ships rise with the tide. And we are interconnected now more than ever. And I think we will become so more. So I think really when we thrive as a whole, we change for the better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please come and join us. Thank you very much, Zinzi. Very interesting presentation. I'd like to get cracking with the point you made about cultural appropriation. All right? You said the answer is very simple for any brand who has a question about, yeah, when do we cross the line from just being enthusiastic about a local fashion scene to actually culturally appropriating that scene? And you said ask them. But who do you ask? There is surely no, spokesperson for an entire cultural group. So how do you go about that?
No, there isn't. And I think that's, as a brand, you need to start making conscious efforts of, if you're going to borrow an inspiration, you really need to do your research. You really need to understand where it comes from, who are these people, what does it represent? And I think research extends beyond just, checking out a Pinterest page, or, you need to be able to contact them and speak to them. Yeah.
But is there? I mean, how do you quantify when has enough research been done, or is it just a question of being transparent about the process and showing that you've done some effort?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a complex kind of theme that we're talking about, because you can give so many examples. I think it's how far are you going to take that inspiration? If you're really going to literally embedded in your collections, where you literally see where it comes from, well, I think then you have an issue if you're not going to credit, I think it starts with crediting, but I think if you really want to use kind of, for example, the way Afriek, goes to Rwanda and works with all of these people, they talk to those people, they really ask them, like, what is important to you? How do you want to be represented? Simple things such as using a photograph on a recent trip to Abidjan. A lot of photographs were taken with the design team that I was with, and they're just blatantly used online, and I feel like the people that you're portraying have no idea that you're using those photographs. you need to ask for authorization. You need to extend the awareness of what you're using and how you're going to use it. And then if the question is, well, but if you're going to sell it and make it commercial property, I think then it's extremely important that you talk to those people. Then you have to. And if you have no opportunity to then, well, then use it.
And your take on this controversial point about African fashion, can it ever be helpful to use that terminology? Or do you think it's actually divisive and we should just get rid of it?
African fashion?
Yeah.
Well, as a Mozambican, I agree with what the lady said. You know, I don't see myself as an African brand strategist or an African whatever. That's not how I label myself. I can only speak for myself. I wouldn't use it.
Okay, that's very clear. Are you optimistic in general about the state of the fashion industry? Let's localize it. Let's say here in the Netherlands. I mean, you talked about going into boardrooms and meetings, and you don't recognize yourself on the other side of the table. When you open magazines, there are positive steps being made, but in general, are you optimistic?
Yeah, I am optimistic. I mean, tonight makes me optimistic, and listen, I'm not trying to, talk negatively about the people that I'm in these meetings with, because these are the very people that are paving the way for more collaborations. Mm-hmm. I am optimistic, yes.
Yeah. Good. Is there anyone who's got a question for Zinzi at this stage? No? Because I'd like us to move on so that we can get Toa onto the couch, and then we'll have a bigger Q&A. Because I don't want us to run out of time, because that Q&A is, I think, that's going to be very good. Our next speaker is Toa Müller. Who has anyone ever heard of Tony's Chocolonely? Yeah, eaten a rape or two. Okay, well, Zinzi gave it away a little bit there, but Toa is the critical voice inside Tony's Chocolonely. So give her a round of applause. Okay, you guys can share the 2 mics, please. Toa, we're going to start actually with a little video that I think you have. So can we run that video first? And then we'll jump into the conversation.
Earlier this afternoon, there were rain activities over the eastern portion of the country and also parts of the middle.
Bonsoir, encore de fortes chaleurs. Il va falloir tout de même attendre le passage de cette période. Ce voile va s'épaissir. Que les nappes phréatiques.
Lovely, lovely. How many times have you seen that video, Toeta?
I think it's the 5th time already.
Only 5?
Yeah,
Okay, I was imagining
it
a lot
hasn't
more.
been brought out, so you guys get a really exclusive peek.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, tell me, what is your official title at Tony's?
It's Let's Get Critical.
And can you, what on earth does that entail?
Well, I'm the critical voice behind the brand and within the brand. So my goal within Tony's is to make my colleagues more woke. Yeah, for those who aren't really aware of what woke means. The person that starts her sentences mostly with but. And I try to look at the company with a very critical eye, what we do, how we do it, and try to open eyes, make people aware of blind spots, basically.
And Zinzi already said that a role like yours, she thinks, should be in every company. Why do you think it is so effective? And can you give us an example of that effectiveness?
I think it's effective because a lot of my colleagues, they work at Tony's because we all want to do well. But in the process of doing well, we make mistakes, cultural mistakes. We don't really get what the sensitivity is that Stephan already talked about.
Can you give us an example of a mistake?
Yeah, well, one of the examples, it's a process that we are going through, but a while ago this is one of the examples I pointed out. We have our year report, and in one of our year reports you could see what Tony's did for the farmers. So it was very much focused on helping the farmers. And so for me that really changed into the page you see right now, so with the yellow outfit, where John Wallace is explaining what he wants to do and how he is benefiting Tony. So that's quite a mind shift for the whole team. Yeah.
And what was the reaction? What is generally the reaction when you show? I was like, oh Jesus, here comes the waiter.
Well, I never sit alone at lunch. But I must say I'm not the most popular girl in the company. And it's because people are, it's not that they're not willing to change, but sometimes it can be really awkward. And when there was one situation, we all have our what we call mock shots. So every Tony is portrayed in the way of their function. So my portrait is with a big question mark. And there was one colleague of mine, a black man, who was working at finance. And he was portrayed with a lot of bling bling as a ghetto rapper. And I said, I really don't like the picture. And
but the employees don't choose how they're portrayed?
No, our graphic designer chose it. And I told him, I really don't like the picture.
Awkward, yeah.
Because it's stereotyping. And from all the things we could have portrayed him, we portray him as the ghetto rapper. I don't think that's fair. And I don't think black men are attracted to working at Tony's if they see this image. So
how diverse is the workforce, out of interest?
Well, it depends what you call diverse.
Okay, let's talk about racial diversity to start with.
It's not good, but we're working on it. So one of the things I'm organizing is theme months, where the theme of this month is diversion or diversity. And I'm inviting someone, Akwasi, which probably all of the people here know. He has written a book about awkward situation, and he is challenging our team to think about why we are not diverse. So we're really working on it, and not in the sense that we say, oh, we want to get more diverse, and then we don't do anything about it. It's really a theme month that has to lead to a more diverse team, not only in color, but in every sense of the word.
And Sehan, tell me, why did you want Tony's here? Or Toa, I should say.
We did a collaboration with Tony's half a year ago on their limited editions. You've seen pictures. And I think also they're a great example of a far bigger company with the same struggles and the same challenges, and a very good example also, especially with Toa, like how are they dealing with this?
And do you recognize some of the challenges, the ethical dilemmas that Sehan described in your line of work?
Yeah, of course. It's very, when I came to work at Tony's, well, our mission is to make chocolate 100% slave-free, not only our chocolate, but all the chocolate in the world. And when I came to work at Tony's, I was really hoping for the mission to be succeeded, and I noticed that I, myself, also had quite an old-fashioned image of what Africa, the continent, was. And I was one of those kids who used to do a sponsor walk for a water well, while we didn't even know if the water well was wanted. And so those are some things that that's a challenge in our company as Tony's that we still face. I talked to a colleague once about these difficulties, and he told me, well, since I'm working at Tony's, I can't be racist. And I said, well, it's a good comment. Yeah. So we had a really nice talk about it, and I noticed that a lot of people think I want to help Africa, and that's why I work at Tony's. So that really, there's a lot of work for me in Tony's still to be done, but we're really on the right path, I feel.
Do you have, is there like somewhere in the short term, a dream goal for in terms of your role, a problem that you want to solve?
Yeah, well, I would love to make my colleagues, because you have to understand, yeah, I love to make them all black. Yes,
black people,
yes.
Tony's.
A lot of my companies come from companies such as Heineken, Unilever, companies where the only colored people, to be really honest with you, often are cleaning. And they come to work at Tony's, and there's this little black woman, me, telling them what is and what isn't okay. But I'm not doing it in an aggressive kind of way. I'm really talking to them. So what my dream would be is for me to spread the word, and for them to spread the word even further in the companies where I'm not there. And I know that some companies won't have a let's get critical, but I hope that from my colleague it will just spread like an olievlek.
Yeah.
Couldn't find the word.
Olievlek,
Yeah.
I know that one. Okay, Tony's has a very clear mission statement. You know, you wear it on your sleeve. It's out there, loud and proud. Zinzi, do you think that's something that's important and other companies should do?
Well, I think they're quite careful in their mission statement, because they're not promising like 100% slave
on the way to 100%
yeah,
slave-free
so
chocolate.
I think they do,
and that's changed, because I think it started with slave-free chocolate.
Oh,
and
really?
then they
Is
kind
that
of
how it
realized, okay, we better mellow that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, I mean, that's quite a good example of doing it honestly. Like, we are striving to do this. I mean, we're not promising that we have, because I think a lot of brands try to, and then, yeah.
But isn't there a danger that gives a kind of free pass? I mean, it's been 12 years Tony's been around, and it's had this mission, and you know, according to some research, the problem with slave-free chocolate, it's gotten worse, let alone better. So nevertheless, in the meantime, the company's revenues keep growing and growing and growing, and people see the ethical mission and they're like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. There's a
mismatch.
Oh,
the mic goes back to the waiter.
Yes. Well, let me be clear. Our chocolate is 100% slave-free.
Okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, throughout the years, we realized our chocolate can be slave-free, but we want all chocolate to be slave-free. So not only Tony's, but all the other brands. We can only do this together, you know, and I mean, we are leading by example. Of course, our revenue is growing, and we're doing a lot of great things with the revenue, but we're not there yet.
Yeah. Well, you are there, you're saying, if it's 100% slave-free.
We're not there yet because we want to make all chocolate.
All chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I genuinely thought that Tony's wasn't there yet because you can't. I mean, you don't own Tony's cocoa farms in Ghana, in Ivory Coast, so you can't be 100% sure that there aren't families to encourage their kids to come along and work for free. Even though little kids are great at picking cocoa. I mean, their hands, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, you can't. Normally, you could say it because where the beans go to the warehouse, you can always have the risk that one bean would fall off another a truck, roll into our beans, and then you couldn't say 100% slave-free.
Okay, but there is another danger, I think, for brands that have these ethical missions or socially responsible corporate enterprises. How do you avoid coming across as too moralizing? You know, is that something you can speak to? Is that something you've been aware of, Sivan?
Too moralizing?
Yeah, too moralizing, or like you want to encourage people to do the right thing, but you have to be very careful with the language you use, I guess. Is it something that you've been aware of?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's why we've been so careful in the beginning. You know, listening to a lot of advice from other people and losing my own voice in it and not daring to say exactly what I wanted to say because of it. But on the other hand, I really don't know how it comes across. I would like to have a Mentimeter, like, are we too moralizing as Afriek? I don't know.
Does anyone have a response to that? Do you think Afriek is on the right track, or are they making mistakes in how they communicate about their brand? Okay, no one yet.
Well, then what my conclusion was, you know, since at this moment it's me, to be very authentic and myself.
Yeah. Do we have any questions out there? Yes, madam.
Hi. The question, I think, goes to Afriek, but it's based on Zinzi's. Do I hold it? Okay.
I don't trust you. That's why I'm going to hold it.
So I think it's something I think as well, because I'm not originally from Holland. And sometimes, you know, I work actually with Unilever and with Heineken. And yes, normally you are indeed, obviously, the only different in the room. But that is also when I go to meetings where 9 people out of 10 are white males, 55 plus, and I'm the only woman under 30, or at that time when I was. So I mean, it's not only color. But my question is, you said, where are the other people that look like me in this room? And then I would like to ask, you being a white woman from Holland, do you also think that also the countries that have black color, they should have more white people? Because you have to be very careful. Because Holland, if you look at the percentage of the population, the majority is white. So it's kind of expected that most people will be white. But if you go to countries like South Africa, where most people are black, and they're represented by a lot of white people in many positions before the quota system, that's the difference. So my question is, should it be following diversity at no matter what cost, or should it follow the kind of percentage that the country has in terms of race?
Okay, Stephan?
Question for me. Well, what I think is the bottom line is that we live in an unequal society, and still, you know, like the percentages for sure. I'm 100% positive are. I don't know how to say it, but in the higher meeting rooms are not representing society for sure, because of the fact that we live in an unequal society. So as long as we're not there, definitely we have to work on it.
Mm-hmm. Another question?
What's an unequal society?
Is Holland an unequal society? Is that what you're saying?
100%, yeah.
So, and what does it mean?
What does it mean?
Yeah, what is unequal?
What does it mean? The fact that we have mostly white 55 plus men in the most important meeting rooms, that our education is based on our own white ideas, very one-sided, that, you know, just the simple fact, what I was saying, the fact that I went to Africa and I was like, why am I so biased? I realized it's because of our culture. It's because of, you know, the things that we learn. That's an unequal society.
Yep. Hold on a second. Wait for the mic, please. Yeah. Go for it.
Isn't that quite a natural thing? I mean, to be biased towards another culture is something that's really in the human being, and people in Africa, any country in Africa, any country in the world, would be naturally biased towards the other culture. So they would be biased in their whole education thoughts towards us.
Yeah.
So in that sense, there's some. I agree with you. There must be somewhere kind of a balance and equilibrium, but you can't expect to be. You have to thrive to be equal before the law. I'm sure that's what we should do, and we're working on it. Hopefully, we will get there in the end. But there's still that genetic element that you won't be able to change for 100%, like the Tony Chocolonely slave-free chocolate. It's also striving to be 100%, but you won't.
I think.
Is it unrealistic to expect we can?
Well, I think you're right. You know, we're always putting other people into boxes to understand the world. That's like our first reaction. But then, you know, we have a choice, and the fact is that, you know, the white people came to Africa with their weapons, with their power, and our whole history is based on slavery and uitbuiten of, you know, another continent, and actually I think big parts of the world. And, you know, that's a fact. That's our history, and it's a fact that we look at each other and the first, you know, we have a first idea about someone else because we put them into a box. But then we have a choice, and because of our history, we should definitely work very hard on it to get that equal society.
Oh. And to the guys in the audience and on the panel, do you find yourself also making mistakes? Like you say ignorant things, or you think ignorant thoughts, and then you kind of catch yourself, Zinzi?
Yeah, definitely.
Can you give an example?
Well, because I work the other way around. I try to bring people from here to there. And then I have my bias as a Mozambican, where I'm like, oh yeah, typical white person, you know, acts like this. Or just a simple example. For example, when we were there, we would organize lunches on a daily basis with the women that we were working with. And the Dutch people that were there, or the Western people, you know, they wanted everyone to eat together at the same table. But this made the artisans feel extremely uncomfortable and almost felt, you know, forced to sit there, and they'd eat there very quiet, which is very unlike them. And I had to explain this, you know, and I had to be like, you're again imposing your norms and values here in the Netherlands, where it's like everyone eats at the same table, and putting it there. But immediately, of course, my first reaction is frustration and like, oh, typical, you know, wanting to impose.
Were they eating Dutch food? Because then I'm sure the Mozambicans were like, I don't know, I'm just going to stay quiet.
Not at all. We had the most amazing traditional Mozambican food every day.
Okay, great.
No Dutch
Any
food.
more burning questions? Of course, we can continue a conversation afterwards. Okay, last question, and then we're going to... Oh, one of the... Okay, two questions.
I have a question for Zinzi. You were talking about how I think designers and artists from Europe, or at least the Western world, are drawing inspiration from African designers, in particularly maybe Mozambique, but maybe also other African countries. Purely from a practical point of view, as your advice for them was to just ask them like how it made them feel, the originals or the original artists and designers from the African countries. Like drawing inspiration happens all the time, you know, in all the artistic genres, from be it fashion, music, dance, you name it. Like, would it be? I think if all those people who are drawing inspiration from each other across oceans and rivers and borders, it will be a pretty bureaucratic world and a pretty huge break on creativity, I would say.
Okay. What's your take, Zinzi?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'm specifically speaking about when you take inspiration from a marginalized group, right? A group that has no voice in, like, on a platform or has not the opportunity. That's the difference. That's what I'm talking about when designers, let's say, take inspiration from a specific I don't know, like a specific textile that is only made in a very separate region of Ivory Coast, for example, and then make it their own and then sell it and have commercial benefits from that, right? Monetary, etc. That's the issue. That's what I'm talking about. Of course, we're going to borrow inspiration continuously. That's also what I said. We are always appropriating from one another. But when you're using it as a commercial viable product, you need to be careful how you're going to sell that. And in the fashion industry, because that's the only industry that I can speak on behalf of, it happens too often and brands get away with it too many times.
And it's also a scale thing, right? I mean, you're talking about big, sorry, I'm over here.
Yeah, like, where are you?
Big fashion houses making money out of this stuff. And I assume that you think there's a responsibility for a bigger brand with more resources to really sort
Absolutely. Brands need to share their benefits, especially if you're such a big brand. And I think, for example, a brand that does it really well is Aiden, like they go to Africa, they work with African creatives. It's like it seeps through their whole story, and so they're really kind of incorporating people from there in their story, and they talk about it and they reference it and they show it. So that's a really nice way of attributing where you get your inspiration from.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Toa.
You cannot benefit from those who you've never supported. That's, for me, something that I find so disturbing, that people want to make a lot of profit from something that they've never supported and that others sometimes have even been locked up for.
Have you ever downloaded a movie, Toa?
What movie?
Any movie? Have you ever downloaded something?
Actually, no, I'm quite the goody two-shoes.
I'm sorry?
I'm quite the goody two-shoes.
Okay, good girl.
Yeah.
Good. All right, last question here.
Okay, so this is a question for Vivian Afriek. Okay, it's a bit
too close.
So, what is really the history? Because I'm a fashion student. I'm studying at the Amsterdam Fashion Institute, and I'm the only black guy of my year.
How many in your year?
I'm in my second year.
And how many students?
There are 130, and I'm the only black guy. And even the black guy that's from African descent. So for me to see you, I think it's a great job that you want something, present something like Africa. But for me, I'm like, you have the white privilege. Like, we cannot deny it. And for me, like, I'm not coming from a really wealthy family, and my mother always said, you as a black guy always needs to work like a Dutch guy can work for 100%, but you have to work for 200%. And I think, and what do you actually want to present, and what's really the history of your textile, the silhouettes, all those things? Because if I look at your brand, I don't see my country, I don't see Nigeria, I don't see the silhouettes, I don't see it. I don't see if you're representing my country. And also, I'm so down with the whole stigma that's Afrique, or even people come up to me like, "Oh, you're African, so you must be liking Afrique." And I say, "No, because it's not representing my country, not the colors, not the silhouette, everything like that." And so my question is, what's really the history? Because at Amphi, we really need to know what's the history, what you're using for a brand, for an identity. So what is really the history of your fabrics as well. And
okay, can you share that in one zinnetje, Stephan? Because that's definitely a conversation for afterwards. You know, I think you can expand on that a lot. But it's a fair point. You know, is this one of the your learning points? Something you want to, or do you already know? This is the history of my fabric, and this is a core pillar of the Afriek brand.
Ooh, well, fabrics have been a difficult thing for us in many aspects. So your question...
Yeah, I mean...
fabrics and silhouettes?
Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
So my very white, one-sided image and how we started this brand was Western design, Western fit. And I don't know if I can say that still, but that was it. And we wanted to do like the locals did. So we bought fabrics on a local market. The history turns out to be it's often Chinese copy of Flisco, which is a big problem.
Okay.
In a very short historic.
All right. But I think, you know, everyone in the room can sense the passion and frustration of that young guy, right? Desperate for role models out there and to be able to prove himself on a level playing field, which is just tough because it doesn't feel like that right now. But let's remind ourselves, fair play that we're all here and these guys are being vulnerable and they're keen to learn. All right. Sorry, sir. Going to have to move on. Round of applause, please, for our three speakers. Okay, and now we're going to move on to Rudy Asbe, the founder of a multidisciplinary network organization in which creatives with both an African and a Western background have joined forces to deepen and research their African heritage. Rudy is the co-founder of, okay, you're going to pronounce it because I don't want to fuck up.
Alkebulan.
Round of applause, please, Rudy. How annoying is it when people mispronounce that?
Oh, the most annoying thing ever, but I'm used to it.
Okay. Tell me, what is it, though? What is it, exactly? I mean, I just gave a kind of website description of it, but what do you guys do?
What we do is a lot of different things, but in the core is showing everyone a different side of Africa. And I mean all the countries of Africa, because some people forget.
It's a big job. Why did you start?
Okay. Do you want the short version? Or
short.
Okay. I think it started when I think I was like 8, 9.
Oh, that sounds like a long story.
No. I can make it short. That's when I went to Ghana for the second time, and my grandma told me all the stories that she lived when Ghana was still under British, rule. And I didn't know this. I didn't know the history of Ghana, and I wanted to learn more. So I started to read a lot of books, like the Ghanaian history books. And then at the age of 12, I got attacked by, they called themselves Nazis. And I think that was the most hardest thing to go through. And the easiest thing for me was to hate every white person. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to learn where this hate was coming from. So that's I think the third time I went to Ghana. Stayed there for a month, researched a lot, and I was 12, 13. Came back and started to think like, I need more examples. I need more black examples of historians. I need musicians. I need presidents that are black. I need writers that are black. I need this. And so I started to collect them, writing certain things down.
You weren't getting that information from Dutch schools?
No,
I thought they're really hot on black culture and black history.
No, what you learn in Dutch schools is slavery happened, and you don't know anything else, and that's incorrect. we go into chapters and chapters of Dutch history, the Second World War. I can say every single thing that happened in the Second World War, but I cannot say every single thing that happened during slavery and Dutch impact on slavery in the continent. And I think that's what I needed to feel, needed to get, needed to understand. And it took me forever. It took me years to really investigate and to find myself. And I think...
And the triggers to really start the project?
Yes, because it's a difficult thing because you still feel like I'm Dutch. It's the first time I say it, but I'm Dutch. No,
what do you mean?
No,
how do you usually describe
I didn't really feel Dutch. I think I feel Dutch nowadays. I can say I'm Dutch. Because I've been to Ghana and you notice that you're not Ghanaian. Because when you're in Ghana, people say you're Dutch. My accent is weird, etc., etc. So, but in those years that I started to, learn more about my culture, my background, I really felt more Ghanaian. I felt more related to that culture because that's where I could find myself. But I think in the recent years, I also started to learn more about how Dutch I also am, So...
And all of this came together in Alkebulan?
Exactly, Alkebulan. It all came together. It was such a good representation of Dutch African people. We have, I think, a whole different way of thinking. Different from the Dutch, but also different from the Africans, I think.
Okay, I tell you what, let's get a little bit of a flavor of the atmosphere. Because we've got a short video. Maybe not play all of it. There's no dialogue, but it gives an impression of the kind of atmosphere that...
of Alkebulan. It's not that difficult. It's just
not
English.
at all, but anyway,
Okay.
Let's have a look at the video. So let's keep it going. Let's turn the volume down. What are we seeing here? A festival?
Yes, it's a festival where we celebrate all the the differences between African countries, cultures. Because even in Ghana, you have 100 spoken languages. There's a lot of different cultures. We're from the mountains, and we have a different view of slavery because the people that lived there weren't enslaved. So we have a different way of thinking. But if you go to the coast side, all their names are Dutch or Portuguese. So they also have a different way of thinking. So you see a lot of different people at this festival, and we're celebrating the differences, but also finding the similarities. And
what makes Alkebulan stand out from other festivals celebrating multicultural history?
I think it's authenticity. If we don't know what we're talking about, we're gonna find someone who knows what we're talking about. It's like we had a whole discussion about storytelling, spoken word, and it's a really typical Saharan thing, actually. So the co-founder, who is Moroccan, she talked to her parents, her grandma, and she tried to portray that on our festival. So it's super authentic. What you see is us asking our parents even, because we're not fully aware of what's going on there. And that's what you see at the festival. It's super authentic, and we ask the people what they want to see, and we portray that.
So I think one of the triggers for starting Alkebulan was definitely your frustration with the lack of diversity and mistakes that you see people making, brands making. One thing we haven't touched on yet is how should a brand deal with the aftermath of a big mistake?
Yeah. I always say that because when a big brand makes a mistake, or whatever brand, they are used to say, I'm sorry, or we're sorry that you feel that way. And that's wrong. If your boyfriend or girlfriend would say that, you would hit him. But yeah, it's true. I think when you say sorry, you really need to mean it and understand where you're making that mistake. And also, if you want to say that on social media, what are you doing afterwards to not make that mistake again? Are you putting a critical thinker in your company to change your identity? Are you putting the right people of color on top of like the places where they make the decisions? Because you can put someone in a PR position, which is fine, but are you going to listen to the PR person, or are you going to listen to the director? You know? So it's a really complex but also very important thing to do, is that if you're going to say sorry, mean it or shut up. And what are you going to do afterwards?
Is there anyone in the audience who works for a company that feels or that has made a mistake like this and is willing to talk about it? No? The guy from Flisco, has your company ever made something that you would consider, I wish we hadn't have done that? Or not at all?
We are not working for Flisco anymore. We're now working for a different company.
But you know a lot about Flisco? I don't know why. It's just happened. But I mean, it's not like I've got anything against Flisco. I'm just, because it's a very relevant. It's a big Dutch company that's very successful and working in Africa. So I'm assuming along that journey, mistakes must have been made.
Well, not only talk about mistakes, but one of the things that when we worked at Flisco in Africa, we were working very much with locals who were running the business in their individual countries. And I think that decision to really become a part of the society where you work, where you try to sell your products, is an absolute necessity.
And what about back home, where all the kind of business decisions are being made? Was that office also diverse and part of the DNA of the cultures that you're working with?
If you look at the total employees of Flisco, in the time that we were there, we were employing about 3,000 people. And I think about 2,200 people were from Africa. So, yes.
Okay. Also decision makers. Great. Are you, Rudy, optimistic about the state of the Netherlands right now? I don't mean let's focus on diversity.
Well, yes. I think the most important thing that needs to happen, I think also it needs to happen now, is that people need to listen. The thing is that people don't listen when and I'm saying they and we now because it makes it a little bit easier. But
the whiteys, just say the whiteys.
I'm not gonna do that. When we talk and we explain something, it's very easy for someone to say but we're speaking of experience, of history, of our feelings, and when someone says but, it feels like our feelings are not being heard. And that's why appropriation is such a difficult thing for us.
And to play devil's advocate for a minute, we heard Toa also is the butt lady, which doesn't actually come across so well when I say it like that. I just realized. Weird. But anyway, you guys know what I mean. What about the other side? So, there's the white 55-year-old guys saying, hey, but shouldn't they also be allowed to have their butts
Of course
in there?
they can say but if you want to know, ask questions, of course, but listen to the answer and don't shove it away and be like, okay, whatever, you told me, now I've listened, now I've done the diversity thing, and I'm moving on. Because that's what I'm a freelancer, and I work in marketing and PR, and that's what I get a lot of times. Listen to what we're saying, listen to the core. A pretty good example is, I think, the cornrows. The reason why a lot of people are mad about the cornrows is not because, she's white and she's wearing cornrows. It's the history behind cornrows. Do you know the history? Do you know that when we used to be enslaved, we were not allowed to wear afro like that? We were not allowed to have that identity. And when we used to do it in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, and so on, we were called ghetto. But why now, when it's hip and it's on a white person, it's not ghetto? That's the essence of what we mean with when we get angry about that. I think when you listen and listen to the stories and listen to how we explain why this is hurting us, diversity would be already like a thing now.
And in the line of your like communication and PR and strategy work, what sort of companies are you working with there?
A lot of companies where you would think they would understand diversity. So I've been at Vice, Top Notch.
And they don't? What sort of mistakes are they making? Give an example.
Well, one of the examples that I think is a good example is one of the days I went to Vice at the office and someone asked me, because I was wearing a hat wrap, hey, you look African today. Don't I look, I mean, I don't know. It's like microaggression. A microaggression is little annoying things that people say and you're like, oh my God, really?
Are there people in the audience who hear this and think, oh, is that really so bad? No?
You can say it.
Yeah, just say it. It's okay. It's a safe space. What about you? Just kidding. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Do you want to contribute? Yeah, go for it.
I mean...
no, you're not holding it. Sorry.
No, I mean, it can happen also to us then, let's say, just for the sake of the argument. But when I have a certain hat on my head, they say, oh, you look Scottish today. But I don't, it's not an issue for me. And I understand, I mean, it sounds weird when I say this, but I'm very open. It sounds weird, but I understand the cultural difference because I'm from the French side of Belgium, and this is Holland is very different, so I understand everything. But I mean, it seems that people don't understand each other because they've never listened to each other, as you say. But listening starts really when you're very young, when you're at school, and there's a limit to what you can. You have time to learn to be an element of society within your country that can thrive. So there is also a focus on your own country, your own continent. And of course, it's wonderful to open towards other continents, but there's a time limit there. So, but it would be wonderful, it would be possible. But also,
are you saying people need more time? People
it's a race that can't be won. So it's wonderful to have such evenings where people, when they're adults, can discuss this and open to each other and understand what the culture is. But you can't expect them to integrate it like kids
the next day. Yeah.
No, I do agree with you. It's harder as an adult actually to change the ways. But I think when you're aware of that you're making a mistake, you're going to change it. And that's the difficult thing. People don't want to be aware or are not aware. Also, I agree with you. You have to learn it when you're a kid. A good example, Dutch history is integrated with slavery. And we do not teach that. There's a reason why there are a lot of Moroccan people here. There's a reason why a lot of people from Asian countries are here. There's a reason why a lot of Ghanaians are in Europe or Nigerians. Why don't you explain why they're here? That makes it difficult for people in a later state to understand why we're here. Why are we sitting here? Why are we in this country? So I don't think there's not enough time. They're not thinking about the consequences that it has, not teaching the right history at an early age.
Okay. All right, guys, round of applause, please, for Rudy. We're finished. Okay. Thank you very much. Lovely. Okay, and now it's time for our last speaker. He is a brand strategist who's worked with brands like Unilever, the UEFA Champions League, Tele2, Heineken, and Renault. And his focus is as a brand strategist, pretty focused on diversity. So hopefully he's going to tell us about the current state of affairs. Please give it up for Stephan Alspeer.
Yes. Thank you, guys. If you like most people, I'm going to guess that you have heard about this generation, also known as Generation I, or Y, of course. And Now, roughly between 18 and 35 years. Maybe you are a millennial yourself. Hi? No? Any millennials here? I can see, yeah, of course. Or the boss of a millennial, or the sibling of a millennial, whatsoever. I'm also going to guess that a lot of you... I'm also going to guess that a lot of what you have read about this generation have somewhat been negative. So raise your hand if this is familiar. You know, the blog postings here around, and millennials are lazy, are selfish, are the worst. So much of what we read about millennials focuses on the negative stereotypes. But let's flip this story. No one has ever lived more connected as the 21st century millennial. Everything that's hot in one place will spread like wildfire around city to city across the world. We are all connected. You can even say that the average Amsterdam youngster feels more at home in London, Kigali, or New York than in the village next to him. And that's a huge insight for a bread marketeer like me. That's me. Because hi, I'm Stephan Alspeer. I'm a brand and media strategist. I have my own agency, The State of the Culture. And I try to help brands connect with consumers through culture and social insights, but mainly through culture. So it's quite easy. Most of my clients use me to sell an idea or a brand, a movement or a simple product to a new audience, and we combine that that's to a campaign or to an online campaign. Most of the times it's very easy. It's the brand has a USP and values, and the outside world has needs and culture. And the magic happens when you connect those four. Like in this case, race and equality and sports and music. That's what the outside is talking about at this moment. That's what we are talking about at this moment when it comes to needs. And when you combine it with the values, like be the best you can be or run faster, then you end up with this campaign. If you forget one of those four, then you end up with what we see in the Netherlands. Commercials like, I just cycled here and I saw this commercial of Radio 538, a radio station that I used to listen to back in the days when it had Jules FM and great hip hop and R&B. And I used to work for that station as well. And the first time I entered 538, everyone was white. And that's not something bad, but when you're making music for a younger generation and your average age of listeners went from 35 to 62, that's the problem there. And all right, let's go back to my presentation here. Just wanted to say that. Oh, sorry. But it was not always like this. Growing up in the 90s, you see how we transformed from stereotyping to cultural storytelling, from sex sells to inclusivity. Thanks to this new generation, that lazy-ass millennial. So the state of the culture at this moment is pretty good, to be honest. Okay, Trump is still in office, but remember the majority of the Americans did vote for the other girl. And Black Pete is still a thing here, but don't forget 60% of the millennials are against it. And this is an international movement. Don't think that we are the only one with Black Pete. All the millennials in Australia are against Australia Day, and the millennials in America are against Columbus Day. And from the first gay prides in Istanbul until the gender discussion all over the world, we are ruling the conversation. The majority of the young people are advocates of inclusivity, LGBTI rights, and more willing to listen to each other all around the world. That's the state of our culture. So if you are a brand that has a target group within this demographic, you better listen. Inclusivity and progression are not special, they are fundamental for you. You cannot build a young, successful brand without it. So 2018 was a celebration, for some brands, of diversity. Not only in the Netherlands, but in all large cities all around the world, we went through a transition. Sorry, I missed one slide of Levi's. It's too funny, by the way. I hope it's over here. Let me see. Oh, it's here. This is the transition of one brand, from a cowboy brand to a gender-equal brand to Levi's, who launches $1 million gun control campaign. This is how agile you have to be in this generation, for this generation, otherwise you are out of market. And I recently worked on a campaign for Magnum Ice in Australia. A day before the LGBTI marriage vote there in that country, we aired this campaign. It's funny, maybe I can show you a little bit. No, it's not playing.
I wanna love you every day and every night. We'll be together with the roof right over our head. We'll share the shelter of my single bed. Is this love that I'm feeling? Is this love that I'm feeling? Is this love, is this love that I'm feeling? Is this love, love that I'm feeling? Is this love, is this love, is this love, is this love that I'm feeling? Is this love, is this love, is this love, is this love that I'm feeling?
Yeah, seriously, I love my profession. You know, it's so blatant and so easy. No, seriously, we aired this a day before the election night, and it was a big thing over there in Australia. But all right, great. But to be critical, you know, Nike and Levi's stance on their stance on sweatshops are not in the advertising. And to be easy, it's pretty safe to use two white girls in an advertising here. So, what are the challenges for 2019 in my industry? I believe that the next step for brands and institutions is not to stand for something, but to change something. Do something for the culture. Let me pick one industry I like to inject with the culture, and let's say that's the travel industry. I believe that the travel industry must open up for a new generation of travelers. And I mean travelers, not tourists. Tourists are those who are flying to the other end of the world to meet, eat, drink, and talk to the same people that they do at home. While travelers are going somewhere to open up experiences and learn. We see that this trend is growing, and while that happens, the advertising must adapt. So last year I received the first briefings from countries in Africa and Latin America. They are looking for another way to present their country. And how cool is it to communicate traveling to Africa in a different way than this? There are actually people living there, guys. And But this is how we communicate, or me, the older generation in advertising and media communicate traveling to Africa. So I'm looking for images like this. And millennials know this, since they are connected with each other on Insta and vlogs. They know that the world is changing and also is advertising. So I expect that the next briefing from TUI or KLM is in this field. And if the industry is not woke yet, we will create our own brand. Thank you. Have a very nice and inclusive 2019.
Great. Stefan, come and sit down. So do we have time? Yeah, we have a little bit of time. Okay, cool. Thank you very much, man. I'm curious though, how much of your advice actually makes it into the final product, the final commercial? Because I'm sure brands invite you in.
Okay, that's a very good question. When I started, I think 0. Because where my culture, my background, the way my parents teach me how to be, I always thought when I say something to you in a meeting that you understand me.
Mm.
So that's the first phase. Then and I'm a strategist, so what I say is in big lines, and then 2 months later I see the commercial and I think, no, that's not what I meant. And
so who's at fault there? You just communicating badly, or they're like inviting you in because they want to tick a box?
Of course,
and
of course
it's
not. No.
It's the former. Okay.
No, both. That's the first phase. The second phase was that I tried to explain it more.
Yeah.
Explain it better. And then you see that in some industries, or maybe all industries, people just don't want to listen.
Yeah.
Don't want to change.
But to step into the shoes of brands, sorry, go for it.
Where I'm at now, that I'm in control of my own production team. So where the problem is in the details, not in the strategy. Because you can have a very inclusive strategy within your company, but when your production team is not inclusive, when the people who are interviewing the people are not inclusive, when the smallest things, when there's no safe space for people, when you don't create a safe space on the set, everything will get worse from the first second on.
Okay. And what about, to step into the shoes of the brands for a minute, and they say, look, we want a more diverse workplace, work floor, but we just can't find the talent. I mean, is there any truth in that?
No.
Okay, so what should they be doing to find the talent? Because they're going to, if you go to like the Film and Televisie Academy over here, I don't know, this is a genuine question.
Okay.
How diverse is that? I mean, that's like the recruiting pool, I guess, for a lot of production houses or whatever. How diverse is that? Does anyone here know? Is anyone from that?
It's not.
No, you guys are just, no. Go for it.
It's totally not. And
I mean, we heard from the fashion example there, that kid's, on his own. Yeah. And I suspect the same can be probably said for the fashion and the Film and Televisie Academy, for instance, or media. So,
what's your question?
Do we need to step up to the plate? Do we need to be forcing our way into those schools, or is there more responsibility on the brands to be creative in terms of where they're looking for talent? That's my question.
Yeah. It's both. At one hand, there's a good explanation why movie and theater academies are so wide. Because for the simple fact, when my parents moved here to Holland, my sister and I were the first to go to university. So when I recruit directors of photography or directors for movies, I see this great curriculum that I started in university, law school, did some work at a law firm for 3 years, dropped out, and then started filming. And all the Tele 2 commercials here are made by a guy with this curriculum. And he's one of the best directors now in advertising, and he's black. So first generation in every country will go. They don't go to art school because art school is a privilege. And when you're first generation, you don't have privileges, not as much as your white friends. Sure. My parents, my kids will go to art school.
Look, I would love to get more. Do we have any time for one question? No, we don't have any time for. I want it. We're gonna have one question. Come on, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
It's not necessarily a question, but a comment that I see on the art academies currently, because I'm a teacher at the Royal Academy of Arts in The Hague. The students there, the millennial students and the Generation Y students, are exactly what you say they are. So they're completely white, and the students that are there are from Asia. So they have very rich parents that can send them here in the Netherlands to get educated in art. But I'm the teacher at the youngster educational program. So students from age 8 up to 18. And they're so mixed. They're so diverse. It's changing.
Oh, kippenvel, toch? That's nice. That's beautiful. Okay, well, that's a lovely note to end on, actually. Stefan, I wish we had more time, but we do not. So please give a round of applause for Stefan Alspeer. Okay. All right. To wrap it up, we're going to go quickly back to the Mentimeter questions. Oh, yeah? Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. Is that a no, or I don't know what that... Yeah, we can do. Sorry. Okay, so let's... fashion from Africa should not be worn, but what do people think now? Hell no. Spot on. There are cultural lines. It's complicated. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, that's that one person. Okay. Now, it's interesting. It's interesting. Okay, the next one. Please. Kind of white European. What do people think now? There was 22 in that no column. Let's see if we're going to get up there if people have changed their minds. How many in total have we got? I'm just looking at the hearts. 15. Okay, a few. Okay, 16. No. 17. People have changed their minds. There's a few. Yeah, okay, good. No. Okay, let's go on to the next question. What is the strongest feeling you will leave this event with? Okay, is anyone voting? You can press shit. I mean, let's see some results. Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. We've kind of done our job. Angry. Is anyone angry? Yes! We got some people angry. Excellent. Oh, patronized. Who feels patronized? Is that person willing to raise their hand? Who feels patronized? Oh, come on. I'm so curious. No? Who feels talked down to? Oh, that dude. All right. Do you press it by accident or you... Okay. It's going to be a long answer. I will answer it later. That's all right. All right, and the last one is kind of from a selfish point of view, guys. I'm always really interested in your constructive feedback, so I'd really love you to be honest. I believe in transparency. So let's hit the next question. What do you think of my performance? Excellent. Yeah, just be honest. Like, you can click anything. It's fine. I don't mind. I do not mind. Yeah. Yeah, it's all useful, you know? It's useful for me. Really, really appreciate it, guys. Okay, so thank you very much to all of our speakers. Let's have a round of applause for them once more. Good. Please stay for drinks at the bar. We can continue those spiky conversations and enjoy yourselves. All the Pakhuis Programmering is free of charge. Please take a look at the other programming events we guess you might be interested in. Afriek will be but Afriek will be here next Wednesday too at a Sustainable Fashion Day. So come along to that and support Afriek. All right, thank you very much, everybody.